I have been involved in this project from day one. In fact, blessed to be involved in this project. I was not there with my teachers, even Dr. Sridevi, my teacher. She's been there at Adayar, so at least this gave me an opportunity to re-link myself with Cancer Institute also. So it was a double goal. So I am here to talk about chemotherapy in women cancers. A part of it I have spoken to some of our own practitioners. So this lecture is not too new. I am not new to this place. So again, being a tail ender sometimes it's difficult to drive points. So I'll try to be brief. Am I blocking the view? Okay. So this is just a lecture briefly on, there was much spoken about diagnosis, prevention, early detection of cancer in the woman in the form of pap smear and VIA and mammogram. And unfortunately, women cancers form quite a big bulk in day-to-day management of medical oncology. So, and they not only form the bulk of the patients, but they form a big bulk of cases who are difficult to manage, starting from the psychological aspect till the familial support, social support, stigma issues. But it is also imperative that many of the women cancers are highly curable. So I am here to drive certain points about women cancers. Since they are highly curable, I think you are the messengers to take it to your patients, because it is better heard from you rather than we sitting as oncologists. So I will be briefly going about this way, and as I have already mentioned in a couple of lectures in the previous IMA lecture, these are few of the jargons that medical oncologists use. You use the terminology called neoadjuvant treatment, adjuvant treatment, concurrent treatment, chemotherapy. But what does all this mean? They are all various forms of curative approaches where chemotherapy is used in a curative manner. It can be given ahead of definitive treatment or after a definitive treatment like surgery, or along with surgery or radiation. That's what is neoadjuvant, adjuvant and concurrent. That's in about 30 to 40% of the time, but 60% of the time we do not give chemotherapy in a curative setting. That's when we call it palliative treatment. So palliative chemotherapy. So this is what I was trying to mention. When we give neoadjuvant ahead of surgery, it is called neoadjuvant, just prior to surgery. And many times we use chemotherapy with or without today's technology, targeted therapy. We can sometimes give it along with radiotherapy prior to attacking the tumor with surgery. So that is what is called concurrent chemoradiotherapy. It can be given in the neoadjuvant setting. It downsizes the tumor. It brings down the size of the tumor. It facilitates a complete surgery by the surgeon, and we obviously understand that that kind of an approach is very important for cure. So now, what about in cancers unique to women? This neoadjuvant therapy, which as Professor Sridevi was mentioning, in breast cancer and ovarian cancer, which are both on the rise, we are more and more using neoadjuvant therapy. So most of the time you find a lady presenting with skin ulceration or skin nodules, and we call it a locally advanced breast cancer. With chemotherapy, we can downsize the tumor, not only downsize the tumor and facilitate surgery. There are studies which show that by giving chemotherapy early on, rather than waiting till entire surgery and recovery is over, it also has some improvement in the survival. Similarly, in ovarian cancer, I am quite sure that most of the practitioners, the gynecologists, you would have encountered ovarian cancer patients come to you with a situation like this. They come with abdomen pain or they come with ascites. You have an ultrasound or a CT which shows tense ascites, omental caking, multiple nodules in the peritoneum, and that is the usual presentation. So many a times the surgeon is the decisive factor. They, after seeing the patient, decide that this patient could better be taken up for neoadjuvant therapy with chemotherapy to downsize. And in ovary we have really seen that giving this kind of chemotherapy helps the surgeon in operating the patient better. So not very individualized to women, but in India these are the other cancers that are also affecting the woman. As madam mentioned, breast, cervix, oropharynx, and even colon, they all, esophageal, colon, they all form the first 5-6 common cancers in Tamil Nadu. And these are the various conditions where chemotherapy can be given ahead of surgery. Quickly to go about adjuvant chemotherapy. Adjuvant means you give something after a definitive surgery is over, or if suppose most of the times when the surgery is done, based on the histopathology report, based on the extent of disease involvement after the surgery, we decide whether chemo is needed, number one. If at all chemotherapy we give, what kind of chemotherapy we need to give, because today we have tailored regimens in various forms of cancer, especially if you take the breast cancer, depending on the node involvement, depending on the hormone receptor status, the grade of the tumor, there are so many factors. We risk stratify each breast cancer and then tailor the regimen according to each patient. So that is the importance of a complete histopathology report also. And this kind of an adjuvant chemotherapy, definitely early on, if you see the history of evolution of treatment in cancer, I think surgery was the first to evolve. Chemotherapy came on very late. So earliest surgeries, like for breast cancer, what they used to call as breast amputation, that was followed. Lot of local recurrences were there. Even when they did Halsted mastectomy, again there were a lot of recurrences. And then later on, when chemotherapy came into the picture, the survival of these patients started improving. So this is why many times from our own doctors, there have been certain questions. They used to ask us, doctor, this is a highly localized tumor. I have done a mastectomy. We don't have any, or we have no lymph nodes involved, or we have only 1 or 2 lymph nodes involved. She is 60 years old. Should we give chemotherapy? The disease is removed. Why should we give chemotherapy? So the answer is one word: micrometastasis. Although the metastasis is not seen by the naked eye, there are micrometastasis present in the body circulation which can cause recurrences. That is the precise reason why even after a localized disease is removed in the body in the form of surgery, chemotherapy is a must. So these are the various conditions where we give chemotherapy, especially in cervix, sometimes along with radiotherapy if definitive indications are there after Wertheim's mastectomy. And colorectal cancer, certain ones which are there in the lower part, these are all the various evolving malignancies where chemotherapy is getting to show some benefit. Again, one disease which is quite close to the heart of a medical oncologist is gestational cancer, which is the unique cancer to the woman. The molar pregnancy has always been very clear but also unclear in the management, which I get to know when I practice. I am quite sure that many of the gynecologists will be facing this problem of molar pregnancy and gestational neoplasm. So how do we manage? So whenever evacuation is done and whenever there is any suspicion of persistent disease, that is when we come into the picture. Doing an evacuation and giving a dose of methotrexate and sending the patient home, I think has not worked in many of the patients. So as of now, as a standard of care after evacuation or after the primary treatment, we have to do a beta HCG follow-up on a weekly basis to make sure the beta HCG levels are all normalizing, and then later even then may need to have a UPT follow-up for at least 6 months without conception. So if there is any deviation from this protocol, I think we may have to evaluate the patient for disease recurrence. And many times single agent chemotherapy is very effective, especially methotrexate. And even in advanced stages, we have to remember that this is one disease which is highly curable. You may have a patient who comes in with multiple lung metastasis and presence in a fearsome state, and it's better we don't tell them like other malignancies that this patient has advanced malignancy and send her home, because still there is a very high chance that this young lady may be cured. Just as to the gestational neoplasm, one more unique malignancy to the woman or young males, the germ cell tumor. Thanks to, maybe Yuvraj Singh should not get wild if he's there to hear what I say, but at least thanks to the entire episode of him getting a germ cell tumor and then later getting cured, we are able to use him in the picture while counseling our patients. So germ cell tumor, again, which is common among very young girls. The commonest mistake which we have seen in clinical practice is we have this young girl who comes with an adnexal mass or a complex pelvic mass. Many of these young girls who have probably either not attained menarche, or you may have these young girls or ladies who are not yet married or married and who have not had children, or who have been recently married. These kind of girls are the ones who we encounter with germ cell tumor. Most of them undergo a TAH-BSO, flat. Today there is an adnexal mass, the patient is diagnosed with adnexal mass, is opened up the same night or the next day, TAH-BSO done, germ cell tumor referred to us. We sit and counsel the patient. She comes crying that there is cancer. We keep counseling the patient repeatedly, bring in some funds, treat the patient. Then we pull up our collar that we have cured the patient. 4 years down the line, we are very happy that there is no recurrence. Patient is 100% cure, but in life she has become a zero. Because she has lost her uterus, she has lost her ovary, probably the husband would be deserting her, and she is now coming to the OP as a loner. No husband, no child. So sometimes the patient feels, have we cured and made her a success in life, or are we a failure ourselves? So once again, why I am trying to point out these few things is, whenever there is a young lady who comes with some form of an adnexal tumor or a pelvic tumor, kindly keep germ cell tumor in the mind. Simple blood test which includes a serum beta HCG, alpha fetoprotein, LDH, may throw light as to what would be the likely diagnosis, and before putting in a biopsy needle or before putting in the knife, it would be kind enough if the oncologist, like a medical oncologist or a surgical oncologist or whoever, would be there in the team to plan the case. Because many times germ cell tumor melts with chemotherapy, we can salvage the uterus and the uninvolved ovary, and what is called as a fertility preservation surgery can be done, and this girl can maybe get married and have children later in her life because she is going to get cured. So that is one point. And just like any other children or other male members or whatever, in lymphomas and leukemias, which are not unique only to men, even women can get, and we have to remember that chemotherapy is the single modality treatment in most of these cases, with radiation given now and then, and they have good cure rates. So the last part of the talk will be about what are the issues a woman peculiarly faces with chemotherapy. It's very different from male cancers because the psychosocial impact is much more in the woman. Just as I mentioned, we pull up our collar that we detect early cervix cancer, early breast cancer by screening. We treat them, we cure them. We saw figures like 88% and 90% on the graph. But then there is a high rate of marital discordance Because once a woman gets a cancer, there is a myth that the male members would probably, it's contagious and they would also get the cancer, or this lady is not going to be able to have further family life or further bear children. This is a very sad reality, and that is why, just as Dr. Geeta was mentioning, it is not only for screening. Even after diagnosis of cancer in the woman, the male counterpart needs to be there for counseling. We need to spend some time for counseling, and we need to make them involved in the treatment process so that this woman will not suffer the rare, or in early cancer, the more common situation of getting cured and being away from her husband. And during treatment, again, hell of a lot of problem we face in treating. At least as medical oncologists, I think we'll be the most cursed persons, because alopecia, this hair is a real big problem. 2 days, if you don't have money to eat, it is okay, but they won't mind going and buying maybe the best shampoo or the best oil for grooming their hair. So this is the kind of importance that our society attaches, and then if our chemotherapy is going to cause hair loss, this has caused many women to run away from treatment. But the only good point is the alopecia is reversible. The hair loss is reversible. Once the treatment is over, they are going to get back their hair, and this you can reassure the patient when they come for chemotherapy. And as I told you, long-term issues again after giving chemotherapy, certain chemo-induced problems like menstrual disorders or infertility sometimes keeps the woman annoyed even after chemotherapy is over. So this can cause some difficulty in follow-up for the woman who is suffering cancer. So I think, as I already mentioned, a good counseling at diagnosis and by the treating physician or the treating gynecologist or whoever is going to see the patient on day one needs to be started as the treatment for cancer is starting, because that will go a long way in helping this woman combat the stress. And again, chemotherapy administration has its own unique techniques, because I am quite sure that many doctors here would have handled chemotherapy and they would have had instances where there is extravasation. We have had certain bad experiences with extravasation. We have experienced certain legal issues with extravasation. I think Madam handles maximum number of breast cases, I think, among our crowd, and I am quite sure that how stressed and tense she will be when she sends her patient to us for chemotherapy, because if they come back with a black hand or an extravasation, they will first come to her and before coming to us. So she is going to bear the brunt. This happens to us in clinical practice. There have been legal issues, there have been litigations against the treating doctor that the CA breast, the lady is cured, and then here she has an extravasated hand where all the tendons have fused, and then there is a bad extravasation, hand goes into contracture. A teacher has filed a case that she has lost her job and she is not able to, and she is filing and fighting compensation. So here the doctor is cursing himself for curing the patient. So these things can happen with simple techniques. If not followed during, these can be the bad extravasation injuries that can occur if administered improperly. Other things, we have lost very rare instances, few patients of germ cell tumor curable for etoposide anaphylaxis. It is not uncommon, it is common. So if you don't expect anaphylaxis and start etoposide and go home, you will sleep, patient will sleep, you will get up, patient will not get up. These things can happen in certain places if we don't have the in-depth knowledge of chemotherapy. So please be aware that these things can happen. Again, sudden cardiac death with 5-FU based treatment we have encountered in certain colon cancers, especially in elderly people. And neutropenia, if not managed properly, definitely can be a hazard. These are all certain small preventable things which are easy if we earlier know about the chemotherapy that we are going to deliver. So again, as I told you, there is no one size fits all treatment. So sometimes we are forced, as I told you, to give certain hair sparing regimens. Not always, not compromising guidelines, but there are certain chemotherapy regimens which do not cause hair loss. There are people who come and say there may be teachers, there may be certain headmistress who's going to address her students and in the next for the exams and other things. There have been certain people who request us for giving certain regimens which don't cause hair loss. So we know which are the ones which can keep them comfortable. So in diabetic patients, neuropathy is a big problem, so we may have to avoid certain neurotoxic chemotherapy agents. Renal failure. Elderly people are prone for neutropenia, so we have to be very careful and give certain prophylaxis for these patients. So these are all certain issues which we take care while selecting regimens for the woman with cancer. And last but not least, daycare regimens for working women. We have so many working women cancer breast patients who come to us on Saturdays, take a shot of chemo, go back, take rest on Sunday and go back to work on Monday. So these patients have learnt nowadays to live with cancer and go on with their work. And simple but important adjunct treatments like certain small doses of antidepressants which will also help in neuropathy. Small doses of steroids are a must with certain kinds of chemotherapeutic agents which can avoid complications. And hand in hand goes the psychological and the vocational rehabilitation, because most of the time we treat the middle income group. So we may have to go a bit more than just a mere doctor to go in and find out how we can get these women out of the stress of losing a job or coping up with the stress of getting cancer treatment. So again, these are some of the take-home points. Cancer treatment is a holistic care. It is not, I have done my job and I send it to Dr. X, he will do this and he will send it to Dr. Y. No, it is a group management. It is a multimodal management, multidisciplinary management. Many cancers are highly curable. So we have to be reasonably clear before branding any patient incurable. Conservative surgeries, fertility sparing surgeries, breast conservation surgeries, these are all becoming more and more feasible without compromising cure. So these have to be exercised in the patient, especially young women. And quality of life issues, starting from hair loss to neuropathy to whatever, we have to take care while giving treatment for the woman with cancer, because it affects them the most. So we need to give some that importance. So again, I salute my alma maters, my teachers from Cancer Institute, from where I am, what I am today actually. So there is life beyond cancer. I think we should not, we and the patient should not fear it, and we should assure, and we are there with your patients. Thank you.